Hi, g'day. So at our school, we use the universal laser system laser cutter, and we've just got a little desktop one that's about A4, A3 in size in terms of what it is able to cut. So to make a new document, what we actually do is start by doing a few things. So I'll just go Control New. What we'll do is we'll make sure we're doing web or whatever file we need to do. There's two things we need to do. We need to make sure the width and the height are 16 by 12 inches, because that's the actual dimensions, and it is in inches, and we can convert later on. So it's 16 by 12 inches, and we make sure it's RGB. That's the two important things you need to do for our system. So once you've done that, you can just go OK and create. And that's what I've done for this one here. So once I've gone there, you go Control R to hide and unhide the rulers, and you can change it from inches into millimeters, and then you're all good, you're back to your size. So by making it the 16 by 12, what it does is that's the maximum size that the laser cutter can actually cut. Okay, so to get into it now in terms of how do you make it, look at my previous videos in terms of how you can draw your various shapes, particularly the Pathfinder tool. So when we're doing shapes in Adobe Illustrator to draw for our laser cutter, I want you to visualize you don't have a fill, you've only got a stroke or an outline. Okay, so if we're going, because if we just have a fill color, if we go the other way, fill and no stroke, you go, hey, that's a cool shape. I like that shape that looks like a bit of a jelly bean thing going on. But when in fact, if we do this, if we go the way that I've described, you'll notice there are actually two overlapping shapes. And if we were to do the red color for cutting, what it would actually do is cut that into 1, 2, 3 separate objects. So using the Pathfinder tool, we can actually combine shapes and get what we want. So the other thing is I can see that's offline, so I might also use a line before Pathfinder, and that whole tutorial describes how to make that. So in this tutorial, just quickly, I'll show you how we can change the colors. So for our system, it needs pure RGB red and blue. So red will do a cut, blue will do engrave. We will reduce the point thickness of the stroke down to 0.001 for both of those. And we'll use this specific hex code for that RGB color. So if we click on this outline, so click on the stroke to bring it to the front, double click, let's manually type it here, or you can also type it over here in the color guide. So FF and then 4 zeros makes it pure red. So 255 goes from 0 to 255. That's the most. So that's full red, no green, no blue. Okay, so pure red is going to be cut, and we make it 0.00, so 0.001. Enter, and that's going to be detected as a cut. So the only way you can cut is do those very specific rules. So FF0 and 4 zeros, and change the stroke thickness down. For engraving, so cut goes all the way through, and you play with the settings depending on the materials. Engraving, if you imagine engraving into Perspex, what it will do is it will cut into the material by about 1 millimeter. Okay, so that's the opposite. So it's 4 zeros and then 2F. So just flip that around, and all of a sudden it's all blue, no green, no red. And that will be an engrave. And both of those two, the laser cutter will actually follow the path to either cut or engrave along the path, and that's actually really, really quick. I do find the engrave goes much deeper than etching, which is, unless you're using one of these two colors, everything else kind of gets defaulted to just being etched. So if we were to have a shape and we were to have it be two thicknesses, two points thickness like this, even though it's the red, it's the right blue, because it's not the right thickness, it's going to go, oh, you want to just burn that into the surface rather than engraving into the surface. And so what it does is it just does line by line, and it will print out and burn that shape into the surface. And quite often there's a vast difference between etching and engraving in terms of color, and it's very obvious when you haven't cut through versus it's just burnt into the surface, because obviously the material is still attached to the shape around it. So using the laser cutter, using our Adobe Illustrator, we can do a lot of things to draw and go into our laser cutter at school. The process, once you've finished drawing and getting it checked by the teacher, is to then we save this file onto USB and we plug it into the computer that we have dedicated to the laser cutter over in our metalwork room. Okay, so that's about it. There's plenty more we can show you, but most of it is just how to use Illustrator, which you can look at the other tutorials to decipher and understand how you can use those other tools.